24 years old the night I learned that love, in my daughter's dictionary, was spelled with a $sign. The dishwasher hummed in the kitchen, a sound I'd grown so used to I barely heard it anymore. I'd just finished wiping down the counters, a habit from 20 years of single motherhood, scrubbing things clean even when I was too tired to stand. Vivian and Christopher had gone to bed an hour ago, or so I thought. I was heading upstairs to check on my grandson when I noticed the light still bleeding from under their bedroom door. I should have kept walking, I should have turned around, poured myself a glass of wine, and gone to bed, but something made me stop. Maybe it was the way Christopher's voice carried, not quite raised, but sharp enough to cut through drywall. Vivian, we already talked about this. My parents are coming next week, and we have nowhere to put them. You said you'd handle your mother. I froze. My hand, reaching for the doorframe, dropped to my side. There was a pause, then Vivian's voice came through, softer. The voice she used when she was trying to soothe him into agreeing with something she knew was wrong. I know. I just didn't think she'd take it this hard. I figured I'd bring it up gradually, but you just told her at dinner, like it was nothing. Because it is nothing. She's got a pension. She can afford a studio apartment across town. It's not like we're throwing her on the street. I leaned against the wall. My knees suddenly felt unreliable. She's my mother, Christopher. I can't just. You can and you will. You told me yourself you'd handle it. I'm just following through. His tone shifted, softer now. The coaxing voice he used when he wanted something. Baby, you know I love her. But my parents, they sacrificed everything for me. They never had a proper bathroom until I was 16, and my mother washed clothes by hand until her knuckles bled. She deserves to be comfortable for once. I heard my daughter exhale. I know. I get it. She does. You said she'd leave on her own if she thought I was treating you badly. That was the plan, wasn't it? She can't stand to see you upset. SOL, act distant. I'll be cold. You come to me crying, and she'll offer to move out before we even ask. I pressed my palm flat against the wall to steady myself. Vivian laughed, a small, uncomfortable laugh. That's so manipulative. It's practical. She's not going to go willingly. You know how stubborn she is. This is the only way she leaves without a fight. And when she's out, then she's out. We live our lives. She visits when it's convenient. My parents are here, Vivian. They're not going anywhere. They're staying. More silence. I could picture her sitting on the edge of the bed, twisting a strand of hair around her finger the way she'd done since she was 7. The way she always did when she was about to agree to something she knew she shouldn't. I hate this, she finally said. She's going to be so hurt. She'll get over it. She's a grown woman. She survived worse. She survived Dad dying. That's different. That was tragic. This is just a living arrangement change. She'll adjust. People adjust. I couldn't breathe. The air in the hallway had thickened into something I couldn't swallow. I stood there, paralyzed by the casual calculation in their voices, the way they spoke about me like I was a piece of furniture they'd outgrown. And then Vivian said it, the sentence that knocked the last scaffolding out from under my chest. She said she'd leave if I was being mistreated, and she's not wrong to think that, Christopher, because you are cold to her. You barely look at her at dinner. She's not imagining it. So it's working. That's my point. She already suspects I'm unhappy. Give it another week. She'll offer to leave on her own. Promise. Promise. Just be patient. A little more distance. A little more tension. She'll crack. I walked away then. I didn't go in. I didn't knock. I didn't scream or cry or pound on the door like every cell in my body wanted to do. I walked back downstairs, opened the refrigerator, stared at the leftover casserole I'd made that morning. Asterisk for them asterisk, and closed the door again. Then I went to the living room and sat in the dark for an hour, watching the street lamp outside cast an orange rectangle across the carpet. I thought about every year of her childhood, every school play, every fever she ran, every time I worked doubles at the clinic so she could have the ballet lessons she begged for. Every night I sat in the hallway outside her bedroom when she was 16, waiting for her to stop crying about a boy who broke her heart. I thought about how I told myself, this is what mothers do. You don't keep score, you just love. But love was supposed to be a door that swung both ways, and I was standing on the wrong side of it. The next morning, I woke before the alarm and made coffee. Not for them, for me that I poured one cup, sat at the kitchen island, and scrolled through my phone without really seeing it. My hands were steady, which surprised me that I felt like I should be shaking, but something inside had gone quiet, not peaceful, just done. Vivian came down an hour later, hair wet, phone in one hand, keys in the other. She looked flustered. Mom, you didn't wake me. I took a sip of coffee. You didn't ask me to. She blinked. I always ask you to. I literally asked you last night. I said, make sure I'm up by 7. Did you? I kept my voice flat. I don't remember that. She opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head. Okay, weird. Anyway, where's my breakfast? I looked at her, just looked. She was wearing a blouse I bought her 3 weeks ago, the one she said she loved, and then left in the shopping bag for me to return. I kept the tags on, thinking I'd exchange it for something else. Instead, I just hung it up in her closet, because that was what I did. I completed her unfinished tasks. There's bread in the toaster, I said. Help yourself. She stared at me. You're not going to make it? I've got a dentist appointment in 40 minutes. You can handle a toaster. I walked past her to the stairs and went to get dressed. I didn't hear her response because I was already in my room, already closing the door, already deciding that today was the day I started answering only questions that were actually asked of me. 3 days passed, 3 days of silence, 3 days of Christopher scowling at me over dinner, while Vivian pretended not to notice. 3 days of watching my grandson, Leo, 4 years old with his mother's stubborn chin and his father's cool green eyes, shuffle between the adults like a tiny weather vane, sensing the storm but not knowing which way the wind was blowing. On the third evening, I came home from the gym to find Vivian waiting in the kitchen with a folder open on the counter. She was wearing her I need to ask for something face, shoulders back, chin high, smile a little too bright. Mom, how was your workout? Fine. You've been going a lot. It's really good for you. Thanks. She opened the folder. Printed on top was a brochure for an apartment complex across town. I recognized it instantly. I'd driven past it last week. 1 bedrooms, half the square footage of this house, and a parking lot that overlooked a gas station. So, she began, Christopher and I were thinking, you've been working so hard for so long, and you deserve a place that's just yours. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere you can really rest. Uh-huh. Plus, with his parents coming, she hesitated. We need the space. You understand that, right? We're not kicking you out. We're just asking you to consider a more comfortable arrangement. I closed the brochure and slid it back across the counter. I'll think about it, I said. She lit up. Really? Oh, Mom, that's... But the answer is no. The light died in her eyes so fast it was almost funny. Almost. What? Why? Mom, we talked about this. No, Vivian. You talked about it. I listened. There's a difference. His parents are coming all the way from Ohio. They can't afford a hotel. They can't. They can stay in a motel. That's so insulting. They're his parents. And I'm yours. Does that mean anything? Or is that just something you say when you need something? She stepped back like I'd slapped her. That's not fair. Fair. I laughed. IT came out hollow. You and Christopher stood in your bedroom 3 nights ago and plotted how to make me miserable enough to leave. Don't stand here and talk to me about fairness. Her face went pale. You heard that. I heard it. Mom, that's not how it was. We were just talking, planning, using my love for you as a weapon to get what you want. I kept my voice calm. Something in me had gone very, very still. You told him you'd make me think you were being mistreated, so I'd offer to leave. You said it yourself. I'll crack. Those were your words. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. Her hands were shaking. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean, Christopher was stressed about his parents, and I didn't know how to tell you, So, you decided to manipulate me instead of having a conversation. I shook my head. I didn't raise you to do that. No, you raised me to, she stopped. Swallowed. You raised me to make you proud, and I wanted to keep the peace. That's all. By making me the sacrifice. You make it sound so dramatic. I looked at her, my daughter, my only child, the person I'd rearranged my entire life around, and all I saw was a stranger who'd learned how to use my love as a lever. I'm going to bed, I said. We'll talk about this tomorrow, when you figured out what you actually want to say to me. I walked away without looking back, but I felt her eyes on me the whole way up the stairs, and I knew she wasn't thinking about how she'd hurt me. She was thinking about how she was going to fix it without actually apologizing. The next day, I called a realtor. I told her I was interested in selling. She said she'd have a buyer within a week. I told her I'd be ready. That afternoon, I walked through every room of the house I bought with my husband 23 years ago, and I said goodbye to it, room by room, wall by wall. The kitchen where Leo took his first steps. The backyard where Vivian learned to ride a bike. The bedroom where my husband told me he loved me for the last time, 3 days before his heart stopped. I thought this house was my legacy. But a legacy isn't a building. It's what you build in the people you love. And my legacy had just told me I was an inconvenience. That evening, I told my daughter I was selling the house. She was holding a glass of wine. She dropped it. Red spread across the kitchen floor like a slow wound. You're what? Selling. I've already spoken to a realtor. The buyer will be here in 3 days. You can't. This is our house. Mom, you can't just. Can't I? I walked to the sink and poured myself a glass of water, and my hands were perfectly steady. It's in my name. Vivian, I bought it with your father. You didn't pay a dime toward the mortgage. You've never paid property taxes. You've never. I'm your daughter. And you were the one who decided to push me out. I didn't. You did. I turned to face her. You made that choice. Maybe not in words, but in every action. You let Christopher talk you into it. You didn't defend me. You didn't tell him it was wrong. You just nodded and tried to figure out the easiest way to make me leave without a fight. She was crying. Real tears this time. I could see it in the way her shoulders collapsed, the way her voice cracked when she tried to speak. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Didn't you? It wasn't an accusation. It was a question I genuinely wanted answered. She couldn't give me one. That night, I packed a bag. I called a hotel. I told my daughter I'd be back for the closing. She asked where I was going. I said I didn't know yet. She asked if she could come. I said no. She asked if I loved her. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure anymore whether love and obligation were the same thing, and I needed to figure that out before I could look at her again. The first night in the hotel, I couldn't sleep, not because the bed was uncomfortable, it was fine, not because the city noise kept me up, it was quiet enough. I couldn't sleep because I kept replaying the conversation in the hallway, the casual cruelty of it, the way my daughter had talked about me like I was a problem to be solved, not a person to be loved. I thought about all the years I told myself she would grow out of her selfishness, that it was just a phase, that she'd learn empathy when she had her own children. But Leo was 4 years old, and she still hadn't learned. Maybe she never would. Maybe I'd raised her to believe she was the center of the universe, and now she couldn't unbelieve it. That was my fault. That was something I had to own. But what she did with that belief, how she treated me with it, that was on her. I turned over, punched the pillow, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, I would call a lawyer. Not for revenge. For protection. Because I had a feeling this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. 3 days later, I showed up at the house with the realtor and the buyer. Vivian was waiting in the driveway, her face blotchy and swollen. Christopher was nowhere to be seen. Mom, she said, please, let's just talk. We've talked. I know I was wrong. I know I handled this terribly. But please, this is your home. It's Leo's home. You can't just... I'm not just anything, Vivian. I signed the last of the paperwork. I'm doing exactly what you asked me to do, leaving. The only difference is, I'm leaving with my dignity intact, and I'm taking the money with me. Money, she repeated. You're doing this for money? No. I'm doing this because it's the only language you understand. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt sorry for her, not because she deserved it, but because I could see how truly lost she was. She'd spent her whole life assuming I'd always be there to catch her, and now I was stepping back and letting her fall. It wasn't cruelty, it was necessity. But that didn't make it any easier. I moved into a rental across town the following week. Small, quiet, no gas station view, just a tree outside my window and a neighbor who waved every morning when she watered her roses. I got a therapist. I'd never been to one before, but I figured it was about time. Sounds like your morning, my therapist told me. Not just your house, your daughter, the relationship you thought you had. Should I try to repair it? Should you? Or do you feel obligated to? I thought about that for a long time. I don't know. I finally said, I'm not sure I can tell the difference anymore. She nodded. That's honest. Let's sit with that for a while. We did, and I realized something I hadn't expected. It was okay to not know. It was okay to be confused. It was okay to hurt. What wasn't okay was pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. So I stopped pretending. 6 weeks after I moved out, Vivian showed up at my new apartment. She looked thinner. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing a shirt that looked like it had been slept in. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. She sat on my couch and stared at her hands for a long time. Then she said, Chris's parents moved in last week. I waited. They're not going anywhere, and I'm stuck cooking for them, cleaning for them, listening to them tell me I don't do anything right, and Chris, she choked on the name. Chris just sits there. He says I should be grateful, that this is what family does, that I'm being selfish if I complain. I sat across from her and said nothing. I thought if I gave them what they wanted, he'd love me more, but it just made him expect more. And now I'm pregnant again, 5 weeks, and I haven't even told him because I'm scared he'll say we can't afford it, or it's too much, or... She broke off, put her head in her hands. Mom, she whispered, I don't know what to do. I could have said I told you, so I could have said this is what you chose. I could have said any number of things that would have been true and fair and coldly justified. Instead, I reached over and took her hand. Let me tell you what I learned, I said. When I stopped doing everything for everyone, I discovered I actually liked myself, that I liked the person I was when I wasn't exhausted and resentful. I liked going to the gym and the bookstore and the movies alone, that I liked not having to ask permission to exist. She looked up, eyes wet. I'm not telling you to do anything, I continued. I'm just telling you what's on the other side of that door if you ever decide to walk through it. It's not easy. It's lonely sometimes. But it's yours. She sat there, holding my hand, and something in her face changed. It wasn't relief. It wasn't hope. It was something quieter. Recognition. She was seeing me for the first time as a person, not a resource. And she didn't know what to do with it. She left an hour later. We didn't hug, but she said thank you, and she meant it. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt like I was treading water. And that, I decided, was enough for now. The week after Vivian left my apartment, I didn't hear from her. And no calls, no texts, no frantic voicemails. The silence was so complete that I almost checked her obituary online, just to be sure she was still breathing, but I stopped myself. She was an adult. She had made her choices. And my job was no longer to monitor her heartbeat from across town. I threw myself into routines that had nothing to do with being someone's mother. I joined a water aerobics class at the community center, mostly women my age, mostly divorced or widowed, all of us moving through chlorinated water like we were trying to wash off the last 20 years. I started walking the path along the river every morning, headphones in, podcasts about medieval history filling my ears. I learned how to bake sourdough from scratch, which turned out to be less about bread and more about forgiving yourself for failed starters. And slowly, imperceptibly, I began to feel like a person again, not his widow, not her mother, just me. A woman with gray roots and a pension and a fierce, unyielding need to stop being useful to people who didn't see her. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of a Facebook post, not from Vivian. She'd unfriended me after the house sale, which I found both petty and predictable. But from her mother-in-law, Sharon, who I'd never actually met but who'd accepted my friend request years ago out of some misguided sense of family unity. Sharon posted a photo of a dining table covered in Chinese takeout containers. Caption, asterisk, when the daughter-in-law forgets how to cook, thank God for delivery. Hashtag city life, hashtag not what we expected, asterisk. I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed the app and went back to kneading my dough. If Vivian was struggling with her in-laws, that was her battle. She had chosen this. She had chosen Christopher. She had chosen to push me out so they could move in. She could live with the consequences. But a small part of me, the part I'd been trying to suffocate with sourdough and podcasts, wondered if she was okay. 2 weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe right. Mom, it was Vivian's voice, but thinner than usual. Ragged. Mom, can you come get me? I leaned against the kitchen counter. What happened? Chris's dad, She stopped. I heard a child crying in the background, Leo. He grabbed my arm. He said I was being lazy because I didn't have dinner ready. Chris just stood there. He didn't do anything. He just watched. My chest tightened. Did he hurt you? It's not that it's... She started crying. Mom, I can't do this. I have nowhere to go. I have Leo, and I'm still... She paused, and I heard her take a shaky breath. I'm still pregnant. I told Chris last night. He said we can't afford another kid. He said I should take care of it. Like it's a problem to be solved. I closed my eyes. Every instinct screamed at me to grab my keys, drive across town, and yank her out of that house by her hair. But I'd done that before. I'd saved her a dozen times, and every time I did, she went right back to the same fire. Rescuing her wasn't helping her. IT was enabling her. Vivian, I said, keeping my voice level. You need to call a shelter, or a friend, or the police. I'm not coming to get you. Asterisk what? Asterisk. I'm not your emergency plan anymore. You need to learn how to leave on your own. Mom, I have no money. I have nothing. Chris took my card. He said I was spending too much. That's not my problem to fix. She went silent. I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. Then she said, very quietly, you really don't love me anymore. I love you, I said. But love isn't fixing what you broke. Love is letting you learn how to fix it yourself. She hung up. I stood in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the flour-dusted counter. Then I called a domestic violence hotline and asked for resources I could text her anonymously and send them yet. I'd wait a day, let her sit in her discomfort. Let her realize that I was serious. The next morning, I went to the gym. I was on the treadmill, pushing myself harder than usual when my knee gave out. It wasn't dramatic, just a sharp twist, a sudden collapse, and I was on the floor with the rubber belt still spinning under my calf. The pain shot at my leg like a wire. I tried to stand, but my knee buckled again. A young woman in a gym uniform appeared beside me. She was maybe 22, with kind eyes and a streak of purple in her hair. Hey, don't move. Let me help you. She knelt down, assessed my leg with practice calm, and radioed for a first aid kit. I'm fine, I said, though I clearly wasn't. Just a twist. You're not fine. You're pale and sweating. Let me call an ambulance. No ambulance. I'll go to urgent care. I just need a ride. She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. I'll drive you. My shift ends in 5 minutes. Stay right there. Her name was Lena. She was a nursing student working part-time at the gym to pay for her tuition. She drove me to the clinic in her beat-up Honda, helped me fill out forms, and stayed in the waiting room until the doctor cleared me. Sprain, not a break, ice, rest, and a brace for 2 weeks. You didn't have to stay, I told her as she drove me back to my apartment. I know, she shrugged, but you reminded me of my aunt. She raised me after my parents died. I'd want someone to stay with her. Something in my chest loosened. Not much, just enough to let a little air in. I thanked her, offered to pay for gas, and she refused. I asked for her number, not as a charity case, but because I genuinely wanted to keep in touch. She gave it. And for the first time in months, I felt like I'd made a connection with someone who didn't want anything from me. 2 days later, I got a text from Vivian, and oh preamble, just a photo. IT was a screenshot of a text conversation between her and Christopher. His words, asterisk, your mother sold the house. She stole from us. That money should have been for our family. You need to fix this. Asterisk, her response. Asterisk, how? She won't even talk to me. Asterisk. His asterisk then make her talk. I don't care how. Cry, beg, whatever it takes. We need that money for the baby. Asterisk. I stared at the image. Then I typed back, asterisk, he's using you to get to me. Asterisk. She replied instantly. Asterisk, I know, but he's not wrong. We do need the money. Asterisk. I didn't answer. I put my phone on silent and went back to my book. The following weekend, I went to the park to read. I found a bench near the pond, spread out my blanket, and was about to open my novel when I noticed a familiar figure walking toward me. It was Lena, carrying a coffee cup and a bag of bagels. Mind if I join you? She asked. Please. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then she said, I found a job at the hospital part-time, but it pays better. I'm going to be able to cover my next semester without taking out another loan. That's wonderful, Lena. She smiled. You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just another lonely middle-aged lady, but you're not. You're like a quiet fortress. You don't let anyone in unless they prove they're not going to tear down the walls. I laughed. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all year. It's true. She bit into her bagel. So, what's your story? Why are you so careful? I told her. Not everything, just the bones of it. The husband who died. The daughter who grew up entitled. The house that wasn't mine anymore. The betrayal I'd overheard in a hallway. Lena listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, you did the right thing. Walking away. Some people can only learn when they hit the floor. I hope she learns. Will you take her back if she does? I thought about it. I don't know. I think I need to see her actually change. Not just say she changed. Actually do it. Lena nodded. That's fair. We sat until the sun started to dip behind the trees. Then she stood, brushed off her jeans, and said, if you ever need anything, a ride, a meal, someone to vent to, I'm here. No strings attached. I believed her. That night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Mrs. Aldridge? A man's voice, professional, but strained. This is Derek from the title company. I wanted to confirm the closing details for the sale of your property. We have all the paperwork ready, but we noticed an unusual request from the buyer's side to delay the final transfer for 30 days. I guess that's something you're aware of. I sat up. No. I wasn't told about any delay. We didn't think so. The buyer's representative mentioned they were waiting for additional funds, but we checked your contract. You're not obligated to wait. We can push for the original closing date if you want. Yes, please do. There's also a note here that a Mr. Christopher Aldridge called our office, claiming to be your son-in-law, asking to modify the payment distribution. He wanted the proceeds sent to a different account. We flagged it because it didn't match your instructions. My blood went cold. What account? A joint account in his name and your daughter's. We didn't approve anything, of course, but I thought you should know. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I just heard. Christopher wasn't just using Vivian to get to me. He was actively trying to intercept my money, fraud, theft. Whatever you called it, it was illegal. And Vivian had to know. She'd given him her account information. She'd let him make that call. I wanted to scream, I wanted to drive to their house and pound on the door until they both confessed. But I learned something in the past few months. Rage is fuel, but it's not a map. It doesn't tell you where to go. IT just makes you run. So I sat, And I decided that the best thing I could do was make sure the sale went through without their interference, and then disappear. Not to hide, to move forward. 3 days before the closing, Vivian showed up at my door again this time. She looked worse than before. Dark circles under her eyes, a bruise on her forearm, purple and yellow, a few days old. She was holding Leo's hand, and the little boy looked up at me with the same confused expression he'd worn since I left. "Mom," she said, "I'm sorry. I know I said terrible things, but I need help. I can't stay there anymore. Chris hit me last night. He said I was trying to ruin his life by keeping the baby." I looked at her, then I looked at the bruise. Then I opened the door wider and let them in. I made them soup. I put Leo in front of the television with cartoons. I sat across from Vivian at my small kitchen table and said, "Tell me everything." She told me the in-laws had been relentless, criticizing her cooking, her parenting, her housekeeping. Christopher had stopped defending her weeks ago. He'd started drinking more. He'd lost his job 2 months ago, but hadn't told her until she found the collection notices. He'd taken her credit cards, drained her savings, and then blamed her for not having enough money to support his parents' retirement. And when I told him I was keeping the baby, she said, voice breaking, he backhanded me, said I was trying to trap him. Leo saw it. Leo saw it, Mom. I reached across the table and took her hand. You need to leave him. For real. Not just for a night. For good. I know that, but I have nowhere to go. I don't have a job, but I don't have money. He's got all my documents, my birth certificate, my social security card. I can't even apply for a new ID without those. I had a choice. I could fix it all for her, give her money, drive her to a shelter, call my lawyer. Or I could help her help herself. The second option was harder. For both of us. I'll help you get new documents, I said. I'll help you find a job and I'll help you with childcare, but I'm not giving you money, Vivian, not a dime. Not until I see you building something on your own. She nodded slowly. Okay. And you need to press charges. That bruise is evidence. You need to file a report. She flinched. He'll come after me. He'll take Leo. He can't. You're the mother. And he's the one who hit you. Trust the system. It's not perfect, but it's better than staying with a man who hurts you. She cried for a long time. I held her. I didn't promise her it would be easy. I didn't tell her I forgave her. I didn't even tell her I loved her. I just stayed. And that, for now, was enough. The closing went through without incident. I signed the papers. The money cleared, and I transferred a portion into a trust for Leo's education. Not Vivian's, not Christopher's, Leo's. The rest I put into a retirement account that I could access, but they couldn't touch that I also set aside enough for a long trip. I'd always wanted to see the fjords, and the pyramids, and the temples in Southeast Asia. Lena helped me pack. She'd become a fixture in my life. The daughter I never had, or the daughter I should have had. She didn't ask for anything. She just showed up with coffee and company and an ear that didn't judge. You're really going? She asked as I zipped my suitcase. Yes. I've got a one-way ticket to Reykjavik. Then I'll figure out the rest. Vivian's going to be upset. She'll be fine. I've already set her up with a caseworker and a job counselor. She knows where I am if she needs me, but she needs to stand on her own. Lena hugged me. You're the strongest person I know. I'm just tired of being used. The morning of my flight, I got a call from the front desk. There's someone here to see you, Mrs. Aldridge. She says she is your daughter. I told them to send her up. Vivian walked into my apartment with Leo in tow. She looked different, cleaner, more focused. The bruise had faded to a dull green. I filed the report yesterday, she said. They issued a restraining order. Chris is staying with his parents. He can't come near me or Leo. Good. I got a job, part-time at a daycare. It's not much, but it covers our basic needs. That's great, Vivian. She shifted her weight. Mom, I know I don't deserve your trust, but I want to earn it. I want to be better. I looked at my grandson. Then I looked at my daughter. I'm proud of you, I said, for doing this, for taking the first step. She started crying. Does that mean you're not leaving? I'm leaving, I said. I need to. For me, but I'll be back. And when I am, I expect to see a woman who can take care of herself. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. I knelt down to Leo's level. Be good for your mom, okay? I'll send you postcards. He hugged me. It was the first time he'd done that without being prompted. I hugged him back. Then I picked up my suitcase, said goodbye to Lena at the door, and walked out to the cab that would take me to the airport. I didn't look back. Not because I wasn't tempted, but because I knew that looking back was how you stayed stuck. I was done being stuck. The plane took off at 8:47 a.m. I watched the city shrink below me. The grid of streets, the glint of the river, the tinies that were houses and cars and people. Somewhere down there was a daughter learning how to be her own anchor. Somewhere down there was a man who tried to steal from me and a young woman who'd given me hope. And up here, in the clouds, was me, a woman with a passport and a plan and no one to answer to. I opened my journal and wrote, asterisk, the first day of the rest of my life. I'm not looking for forgiveness. I'm not looking for closure. I'm just looking for the next corner. Asterisk. Then I closed the book, ordered a glass of wine, and watched the clouds swallow the world below. The flight to Reykjavik was long enough to make me reconsider every life decision I'd ever made, but short enough that I didn't actually regret any of them. Somewhere over Greenland, I realized I hadn't checked my phone in 6 hours, 0.6 hours, without waiting for a crisis call. 6 hours without scrolling through Vivian's social media to see if she was okay. 6 hours of just existing in a metal tube at 35,000 feet, eating overcooked chicken, and watching a movie I'd never heard of. It felt like freedom. It also felt terrifying. I landed at Keflavik Airport in the middle of a gray afternoon that could have been morning or evening, depending on which clock you believed. I picked up my rental car, a sensible hatchback that smelled faintly of wet wool, and drove toward the coast. I'd booked a cabin near a black sand beach, far enough from the main tourist routes that I could hear myself think. I didn't know what I was looking for, exactly. Peace? Perspective? Permission to stop being everyone's emergency contact. Whatever it was, I figured Iceland was as good a place to find it as any. The first 3 days were a blur of hot springs and waterfalls and driving on roads that seemed to lead nowhere till I took photos I'd never look at. I ate skyr and lamb soup and felt my blood pressure drop a few points per meal. I didn't think about Christopher. I didn't think about the house. I tried not to think about Vivian. But she kept creeping in. Not her voice, exactly. More like a shape in the corner of my vision. A reminder that I'd left behind a woman who was still learning how to stand. On the 4th morning, I got a call from Lena. Not Vivian. Lena. Hey, she said, her voice cheerful but careful. Just checking in. How's Iceland treating you? Cold. Beautiful. I've seen more geothermal pools than I've seen people. That sounds like heaven. It's not bad. I leaned against the doorframe of my cabin, watching the distant mountains. How's Vivian? Lena paused. She's, okay, working at the daycare. Leo's adjusted. She's been going to therapy twice a week. She also signed up for a community college course, accounting, I think. She says she wants to be able to manage her own money, so she never gets trapped again. I felt something warm spread through my chest. That's good. That's really good. She asked about you. Wanted to know if you were okay. I told her you were busy not being her mother for a while. I laughed. You said that. Paraphrased. She's not angry, by the way. I think she gets it. She told me she understands why you left. Did she say that genuinely, or did she say it like she was trying to convince herself? Both, but she's moving forward. She's even started talking to a lawyer about custody. She wants to make sure Christopher can't use Leo against her. I exhaled. Good. Keep me posted. Will do. Enjoy the volcanoes. We hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I put it away and drove to a geothermal field where steam rose from the ground like breath from a sleeping giant. That evening, I met Astrid. She was 62, a retired nurse from Oslo, and she was sitting on the same bench overlooking the same valley I'd chosen for sunset. She had silver hair cut short and a laugh that came from somewhere deep in her belly. We started talking about the weather, which evolved into a conversation about our respective divorces, which evolved into her telling me about her 3 children who all lived in different countries and her ex-husband who'd married a woman half his age and still called her every Christmas drunk and weepy. You travel alone? She asked. Usually. You? Always. No one wants to come with me. They think I'm too set in my ways. I think that's a good thing. You know what you want. She nodded. I know what I don't want. That's more important. We had dinner together at a tiny restaurant near the harbor. She ordered fish I couldn't pronounce and told me about her philosophy. People think the point of life is to hold on. I think it's to let go. Let go of the people who don't want to stay. Let go of the versions of yourself that don't fit anymore. Let go of the guilt you carried for no reason. I asked her if she'd ever had children who disappointed her. Of course, she said. My son, Lars, he stole from me. Took my savings when I was in the hospital. I found out 6 months later. I didn't call the police. I just said, "You're on your own," he cried. He apologized, I said. I hear you, but I don't trust you anymore. You'll have to earn that back. Did he? She sipped her wine. He's been working for 10 years to prove he's changed. We're not close, but we talk. It's different now. He knows I won't rescue him, so he rescues himself. I looked at her across the table and thought, this is who I want to be when I grow up. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but the preview read, asterisk, this is Sharon, Christopher's mother. Can we talk? Asterisk. I stared at it, then I typed back, asterisk about what? Asterisk. Her response came within seconds, asterisk about Vivian. She's made some claims about my son. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Asterisk. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I called her. Sharon, this is a surprise. Mrs. Aldridge, I know we haven't spoken, but I think it's time we did. Vivian is telling people that Christopher hurt her. That's not true. She's exaggerating. She's always been dramatic. Did you see the bruise on her arm? She bruises easily. She always has. You know how pale she is. I know she had a bruise that matched the shape of your son's hand. I know she had witnesses. I know there's a police report. Silence. Then, she's trying to ruin him. She's after money. She's always been after money. Sharon, I'm going to say this once. You can believe whatever you want, but I have no interest in defending Vivian to you. She's an adult. She made her choices. If she says your son hurt her, I believe her, not because she's my daughter, because I've seen her lie, and she's not good at it. Whatever she told you, it's probably closer to the truth than anything Christopher has said. She's a manipulative. I hung up. I didn't need to hear the rest. That afternoon, I hiked to a waterfall. The trail was steep and muddy, and my knee complained the whole way, but I kept going. Every step felt like putting distance between myself and the person I used to be, the person who answered every call, the person who fixed every problem, the person who sacrificed her own peace so others could have theirs. At the top, I sat on a rock and watched the water crash into the pool below. The spray cooled my face. I closed my eyes and listened to the roar. And then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Vivian. Mom, her voice was shaking. I need to tell you something. What happened? Christopher called me from the hospital. He was in a car accident. He's been drinking, Mom. He hit a tree. He's got a broken leg and some internal injuries. He's asking for me. He wants me to come see him. I opened my mouth, then closed it. This was the moment I'd been dreading. The moment where she'd ask me what to do, and I'd have to tell her nothing. What do you want to do? I asked. I don't know. He's hurt. He's in pain. And part of me still, I don't know. I don't want to be the person who abandoned someone who's suffering. Is he still the same man who hit you? I don't know. I haven't seen him in weeks. Vivian, think about what you'd say to a friend in your position. What would you tell her? She paused. I'd tell her to stay away, that he made his choices, that she's not responsible for him. Then why is this different? Because he's Leo's father. And that means you have to be his caregiver? Or does it mean you have to be a safe parent for Leo? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, very softly, I hate this. I know. I hate that I still care. I hate that I feel guilty. I hate that I can't just walk away like you did. I took a breath. I didn't walk away, did I set a boundary? There's a difference that I love you, I'll always love you, but I can't fix you, and I can't make choices for you. I can only stand on the other side of the line and hope you find your way across. She was crying. I could hear it in her breathing. Can you come home? She asked. Not to fix things, just to be here, just to be close. I looked at the waterfall, the spray, the endless sky. I'll come back, I said. Not now, but soon, when I'm ready, and when you're ready to see me without needing me to save you. I don't need you to save me, she said. I need you to see me, actually see me, the person I'm trying to become. That hit me harder than I expected. Okay, I said. I'll see you when I get back, but I'm staying a few more days. I need to finish something here. Finish what? I'll tell you when I see you. We hung up and I sat on the rock for another hour, watching the waterfall, feeling the cold seep into my bones, and I realized that leaving wasn't the hard part. It was staying gone long enough for change to happen. 2 days later, I got another call from Lena. This one was different. Something weird happened, she said. A lawyer called Mead, he's representing Christopher. He said he's going to sue you for unjust enrichment because you sold the house Vivian lived in, without sharing the proceeds with her. He claims Vivian has a legal claim to part of the sale because she made material contributions to the property over the years. What contributions? He says she paid for repairs, upgrades, that sort of thing that I don't think he's got a case, but he's trying to intimidate you into settling if he wants you to hand over 30% of the sale price. I felt a cold wave wash over me. Not fear, anger. He can't do that. The property was in my name alone. Vivian never paid a dime toward the mortgage. She never signed any papers. She has no claim. I know, but he's hoping you'll fold rather than fight. He's also trying to get the court to freeze your accounts until the case is resolved. Is that even possible? Probably not, but he's counting on you not knowing that. I thought for a moment, then I said, call my lawyer, Paul. He handled the sale. Tell him to send a cease and desist, and tell him to file a countersuit for harassment. Christopher's using the legal system to abuse me financially. That's not a civil case. That's a pattern of intimidation. You're not going to settle? Not a chance. He took a shot. Now he gets to see what happens when you try to bully someone who's already lost everything that mattered. Lena laughed. You're kind of terrifying, you know that? I'm just not afraid anymore. The next day, I hiked with Astrid to another waterfall. We sat on a ridge overlooking a valley that stretched to the horizon. She handed me a flask of something warm and alcoholic. To letting go, she said.